Hey, my name is Milan, and in today's video we're going to talk about every developer's favorite topic, which is of course validation. And I may have been joking about the favorite topic part, but validation is something that you can't really avoid if you want to be a good developer. So let's take a look at a typical example of how we would do input validation into a minimal API endpoint. The same applies for controllers or gRPC. It doesn't matter how you're getting your request data from, you still need to check that the input data that you get is valid for your use case. Now, I have a set of checks inside of the API register endpoint that is accepting a user registration DTO. If we take a quick look at this DTO, you can see that it has a bunch of properties on it. It also has two nested types, the personal info object and the address info object. Now back to our endpoint, you can see that inside of it, we have a lot of validation checks. The code for the endpoint begins on line 14 and goes all the way until the line 126. So we have more than 100 lines of code for this minimal API endpoint. And most of the code here is just if statements performing some validation. Now, what I want to focus on in this video is how we can use a popular library called FluentValidation to encapsulate all of these validation rules into a separate class so that we can simplify our API endpoint and make any custom logic that's inside more evident. We'll also need to test the behavior of our API, so I have a set of requests in the HTTP file that we can send to trigger a specific validation rule. I also have a valid request that's not going to trigger any rules, and we're going to get a 200 OK response, and a bunch of requests that are going to cause a failure and return a respective response. Whenever we run into a problem, the API endpoint is going to return a problem details response that you can see here. And inside of the errors extension, we will have a validation errors array containing all of the errors that we were able to collect for a given request. So let's go back to our API endpoint, and I'll quickly walk you through the validations that we have in place. So we are checking that the email is valid. We also have some password validation, validating the personal info object. Then we're validating the address object. We also have age validation, which requires us to do some calculation. And we have a minimum age set as a variable. This could be an environment variable or an application setting. We're going to tackle this a bit later, but for now, let's just assume that this is hard-coded. Lastly, we have a check that the request has accepted the terms of the registration, and if we encounter any errors, we're going to return an HTTP validation problem details result. So these are the validations. Now let's see how we can introduce Fluent Validation into this API. If I go ahead and install a NuGet package and look for Fluent Validation, you can see that the most popular one is the Fluent Validation NuGet. So we can go ahead and install this one, or we could just install the dependency injection extensions package that's going to contain the Fluent Validation library. So let's say I go the simpler route and install the NuGet with the DI extensions in place. So why am I doing this? Well, this is going to allow me to say builder services add validators from assembly. And what this is going to do is it's going to scan the current assembly looking for any Fluent Validator implementations, and is going to register them as a respective service with dependency injection. An alternative approach would be doing this manually, but we don't have to. So let's specify the program assembly, as this is what I want to scan, and I'm also going to say include internal types to true, because I want my validators to be internal. And then this is going to register the required services for me to perform validation. Next, I'm going to make a copy of my API endpoint, and I'm going to rename the old endpoint, or rather I'm going to update the route to API register/old. And then let's paste in the code for the new endpoint, which is going to contain the original route, and I'm going to start moving the individual validations into a Fluent Validator class. So let's create a validators folder, which is going to contain the types that are responsible for validation. And because I'm accepting a user registration DTO, let's create a validator with the same name. So I'm going to add a user registration DTO validator. So what do we have to do to make this work with Fluent Validation? We need to implement the abstract validator base class, and I have to specify the user registration DTO as the generic argument. Then inside of the constructor, I can define the various rules that I want to enforce for this validator by calling the RuleFor method. There is also the RuleForEach if you have a collection on the other side, and this allows you to easily validate a collection where you can call RuleForEach and then define the individual validations for the elements in this collection. But for now, let's focus on these simple validations, and let's start by validating the email of this request. So we first select the property that we want to validate, and then we can specify the various rules. For example, I can validate that this isn't an empty email, and if I want to, I can specify a custom error message. For example, I can say email is required if this rule fails. FluentValidation also comes with a bunch of built-in validators like the email address validator, which is going to check that the property that we are validating, the email in this case, is a valid email address. And I can also specify a custom error message, and I just want to use the same message that I have in my API endpoint. So let's specify with message and say invalid email format. So now I can go to my API endpoint and get rid of the validation that was previously there that was responsible for email validation. So let's just keep the comment so that it's easier to track what we migrated to the specific validator. Now I'm going to add the validations for the password and the confirm password properties. I also have a not empty validator since this is a string property, but for something like a password, you also want to have additional rules which you can chain in the same rule expression. So in this case, I'm checking that this has a minimum length of 8. We can also introduce checks that this contains uppercase, lowercase letters, symbols, and so on. For the confirm password, we want to validate that this is the same value as another property on the same DTO. So we can do that with the equal rule and also specify a custom error message. So let's go ahead and grab the comment and get rid of the validations that we have inside of our endpoint. So let's remove that. I'm going to add the comment here, and we also move these input validation rules into the abstract validator. The next thing we have is a complex property. So we're no longer working with just primitive types. This is a personal info object on the user registration DTO. So what FluentValidation allows you to do is to define custom validators that you can compose together to achieve a more complex validation result. So for the personal info object, I can go ahead and introduce a custom validator that's going to contain the specific rules. I'm going to call this the personal info validator, and let's make this an internal and sealed type. We're also going to implement the abstract validator base class, and then let's specify the personal info object. And then inside of the constructor, I can define the individual rules. So let's say that the rule is that the first name is not empty, and the custom error message is that the first name is required. I'm going to copy this rule because the second one that we have is that the last name is required. And then this is going to allow us to get rid of these validation rules here. Now, what about the check that the personal info is not null? Something like this, we can still leave in the user registration validator. And let me show you what that's going to look like. So I can say RuleFor and select the personal info object, and I'm going to say not null. And then I can add my custom error message that personal information is required. But what about using the personal info validator? Well, I can call the setValidator method and just pass in a new instance of my custom validator, which is the personal info validator type. So now this is going to take care of all of the rules that I had in my endpoint, and I can remove these checks. The next thing that we have is an address object, and we can use the same approach with defining a custom validator. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to introduce an address info validator class. Let's make it internal and sealed, and it's going to implement abstract validator, and I'll specify the address info object. Now, when it comes to the rules for this validator, I'm going to just quickly paste them in. We're going to do just some simple input validation that the input fields aren't empty. Of course, you can do much more interesting things. For example, these validators also support dependency injection. So if I had an abstraction, let's say I have an interface. For example, this could be an address API object with a simple method that could be async. So let's say that we are returning a boolean, and we're going to have one method called validate async accepting an address info object. What you can do with FluentValidation is inject this service through the constructor. Now you'll also have to be mindful of service lifetimes. By default, validators are configured with dependency injection as scoped services. But the point of this is that we can do something like this. I can say RuleFor and specify my entire address info object, and then I can say must or must async. In this case, I want to do an async validation, so I'm going to use must async, and I can define my custom predicate to validate my address. So I can say address API, validate async, and specify my object. Of course, the actual overload also gives me access to a cancellation token that I can pass into my async method, but let's just discard it. So this is how simple it is to define an async validator. Now we can also discuss if this is actually something that you should be doing. My personal preference is to just use FluentValidation for input validation, so simple stuff like this, not empty, if the password is of a specific length, if the confirm password field matches the original password, and so on. For anything more complex, especially things that involve reaching out to an external service, I prefer leaving that inside of my endpoint. So I'm going to omit the address API abstraction, and let's just have the simple validator in place like what we have here. Now, when it comes to using this in the user registration DTO validator, I'm going to use the same approach as before, just do a not now check, and we're also going to set our custom validator. So let's get rid of the address validation, and let's omit the code from our endpoint, and I'm just going to add a comment here. So what do we have left in the endpoint? We have our age validation, which actually has two parts. First, we are checking that the date of birth isn't in the future, and then we are checking the minimum age requirement. So let's create a set of helper functions inside of our validator. And for example, let's start with the simpler one, and I'm going to call this beInPast. And the argument is a datetime object, which I will call date of birth. So let's say that this returns true if date of birth is less than datetime today. And this is just the same validation that I already had in place inside of my API endpoint. Now let me grab the code for the age validation, and let's create another helper method here, which I'm going to call beValidAge, and you'll see why I'm using this naming convention. And let's say I have a date of birth as the argument and an integer field representing the minimum age. And I'm just going to drop in the code that we had in our minimal API endpoint and replace the date of birth reference. And then this should return true if the age is greater than or equal to the minimum age. So what does this allow me to do? Now I can say RuleFor, and I can specify the date of birth. And let's just check that this is not empty with a custom error message. And then I can use the must extension method to specify my custom validations. So the first one is that the date of birth must be in the past. So you can see why I was using this naming convention. It makes my custom rules more readable. And the next rule that I have is that the date of birth must be a valid age. Now, because this has multiple arguments, I will also have to specify the minimum age, which I'm going to hardcode to what I already had in the endpoint, and then we can call beValidAge, specify the date of birth and the minimum age value. And then I can also specify my custom error message for this validation rule. Lastly, we also had a rule for the terms, so let's also add that. And let me add the respective comments here. And then we're going to move on to our next step, which is how do we actually trigger this validator inside of our API endpoint. So I will get rid of all of the validation rules here. And remember that previously we had a set of validation errors that we were using to convert them into a problem details response. With FluentValidation, what you can do is inject an IValidator service and specify the type that you are validating. Remember that we added some code earlier, this line here, which is going to scan our assembly, pick up any validator implementations, which is what we were building so far, and then register that with dependency injection. And it's going to be registered as an IValidator of T. In this case, our specific type is the user registration DTO. So what I can do in my endpoint is say validator validate, and this will give me back a validation result. There are also some other extension methods, for example, validate and throw, which is going to throw a validation exception if your validation fails. Now, you can do this if you have a global exception handler. I'm just going to use validate. Now remember that there is also validate async, and you will have to use this if you define any async validator inside of your Fluent validation rules. Now, because I didn't, I can go ahead and use just validate, specify my DTO, and I'm going to get back a validation result. Then I can check if the validation result is not valid, and in that case, we want to return an error. So what I need is a dictionary containing my actual errors. And the validation result has a helpful method called toDictionary that I can call and convert all of the validation failures into a dictionary. So you will see what this looks like when we finally run our implementation. So I'm going to start the application in the background, and let's go ahead and send a valid request, and you can see that we are getting a 200 OK response. Now this time, if I send an invalid request, in this example with an invalid email, we're going to get an updated error format, which contains the property that triggered the validation error along with our custom message. For the required fields in the personal info object and the address object, we would get something like this. So you can see that now each error is also scoped to the specific property that triggered this warning. You can change this by also specifying a custom error code inside of your validators if you want to implement something specific to your API. So you can see how we went from an endpoint that had 100 lines of code, which contained a bunch of simple input validation, and we simplified it to just one method call and a few classes. I find this approach more maintainable because most of the time when I need to make changes to some code, it's usually in the business logic, which let's assume we have right after we run the validation. And if I ever need to add new validation rules, I can go into the validator and configure them here. With the custom validators like the personal info validator and the address info validator, you can even implement reusable validators that you can reuse from other validators in your code. Now, what if we don't want to hard code things like the minimum age requirement in this example? Well, I have a validation settings type that contains a minimum age property. And what we could do is implement a simple options pattern using this settings class. So I can inject an iOptions instance and specify the validation settings. So let's call this options. And then when I specify the minimum age here, I can pull that from the options value minimum age. I would need to provide this value in my application settings or through the environment variables, and then I can make the minimum age requirement configurable. And of course, I would need to register the options type with dependency injection, and I can call something like this. I can say builder services configure, specify my validation settings, and then use the configuration object to access the specific section that contains these configuration values. And if you are enjoying this video so far, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and smash the like button because your support means a lot to me. Now, before we leave, I want to show you one more cool thing that Fluent Validation can do, which isn't so popular. So I'm going to add a class called InlineValidation extensions. And we're going to use the InlineValidator class from Fluent Validation that allows me to implement a quick throwaway validator that I can use whenever I need inside of my code without having to specify validation classes. How you would use an extension method like this is, let's say I have a variable called personal info result, and I want to define an inline validator on the personal info property. So I'm going to call validate inline async, and then I can provide a delegate to specify my inline validation rules. So something like this. Let me just make this async so that all of this compiles, and then I can do the same as we did here. If the personal info result is not valid, we're going to return a validation problem. So you can see that the syntax is the same as if you were defining the validations inside of a class, except we're doing this inline in the method where we need the validators. You can move this into a helper method so that it doesn't pollute your main code. So it's a practical approach if you want to keep the validations simple, in place, and scoped to where you actually need them. Plus, it also reduces the number of classes that you will need to maintain inside of your codebase. So let me know in the comments what you think about the FluentValidation library and if you have ever used the InlineValidator in the past. Go ahead and watch this video next if you want to continue improving your skills, and until next time, stay awesome.